Let me paint a picture. You're a kid. You bring home a test score, 87 out of 100. And before you can even feel proud of it, before you can even put it down on the table, he looks at it and says, "Where did the other 13 marks go?" No, "Well done." No, "I'm proud of you." Just, "Where did the other 13 go?" And you learned something in that moment. You learned that good enough was never going to be good enough. That love in this house had conditions attached to it. That you had to earn the warmth that other kids seem to just get automatically. And maybe you're watching this right now, and that story didn't just remind you of someone, it was you. Maybe it still is you. Grown up, successful by most measures, and still, somewhere deep down, trying to get a score high enough to finally feel like enough. Or maybe you are the father. And somewhere in the way you push, the way you demand, the way you can't quite bring yourself to just say, "I'm proud of you," without a "but" attached, you recognize something you were never supposed to become. Today we're going into the psychology of the strict father, not to villainize, not to excuse, but to understand. Because understanding is where everything changes. The first thing you need to know about strict fathers is this: almost none of them invented it themselves. Somewhere behind that hard exterior is a boy who had his own version of the same story. A father or a mother or a life circumstance that taught him the world was unforgiving, that softness was dangerous, that if you weren't pushed, you fell behind, that love was demonstrated through provision and discipline, not through warmth and words. Psychologists call this intergenerational transmission of parenting style, which is a complicated way of saying we parent how we were parented. Not always consciously, not always intentionally, but the template gets passed down with almost frightening precision. The strict father who never says, "I love you," was very often raised by someone who never said it to him either. The father who pushes relentlessly was very often a boy who was told that anything less than excellence was unacceptable. He didn't choose that wiring. It was handed to him before he even knew what parenting was. That doesn't make the impact on you any less real, but it does change the way you see it. Here's something that gets missed in almost every conversation about strict fathers. The harshness, the rigidity, the impossibly high standards, the emotional distance is almost never about coldness. It is almost always about fear. Fear that if he goes soft, you won't be prepared for a world he knows is hard. Fear that if he praises you too much, you'll stop pushing. Fear that love, expressed too openly, makes you vulnerable. And vulnerable people get hurt. He's seen it. Maybe he's lived it. So he builds armor. And then, without meaning to, he asks you to build armor too. Psychologists describe this as authoritarian parenting, a style characterized by high demands, strict rules, and low emotional responsiveness. And the research on it is consistent and sobering. Children raised in highly authoritarian households often grow up with higher achievement in some areas, but also higher rates of anxiety, lower self-esteem, and a deeply rooted belief that their worth is tied to their performance, not because their father didn't love them, but because they spent their entire childhood trying to decode a love that was never clearly expressed. Let's talk about you for a second, or the version of you that grew up under that kind of roof. You probably became very good at a lot of things. High standards have a way of producing capable people. That part is real. But alongside that capability, something else grew, a voice in your head that sounds a lot like him, that grades everything you do before you've even finished doing it, that finds the flaw in every win, that feels genuinely uncomfortable receiving a compliment, because compliments were never the language you grew up speaking. A lot of people raised by strict fathers become chronic overachievers, not because they love the achievement, but because stillness feels dangerous, because the moment they stop performing, that old childhood feeling rushes back in, the feeling of not being enough, of waiting for the but. And relationships get complicated too. Some people raised this way become avoidant, uncomfortable with vulnerability, with intimacy, with anyone getting too close. Others swing the opposite way, desperate for approval, reading every interaction for signs of disappointment, apologizing before they've even done anything wrong. Both responses make complete sense. Both are just a grown child trying to navigate a world using tools that were built for survival, not for living. Here's the part that's hard to sit with, especially if you were the child. Most strict fathers love their children enormously. The love is not the problem. The language is the problem. He never learned to speak it softly. He learned to speak it through sacrifice, through working himself to the bone so you'd have options he never had, through pushing you because he couldn't bear to watch you struggle the way he struggled, through being hard on you because the world was hard on him and he wanted you ready. That is love, expressed badly, expressed in the only dialect he was ever taught. And a lot of strict fathers carry a quiet grief about this, especially as they get older. They watch their children keep a careful distance. They notice the flinch. They feel the gap they created but don't know how to cross it. Some of them spend years waiting for a conversation that never comes, not because they don't want it, but because after a lifetime of being the strong, silent, unmovable one, they don't know how to be the one to reach first. So where does this leave you? If you were the child, you're allowed to hold both things at once. The hurt is real. The impact is real. And his love, in whatever shape it came, was probably real too. Healing doesn't mean excusing. It means understanding enough to stop letting the past run your present. If you were the father, it is never too late. Not for the conversation, not for the 3 words that maybe never came easily, not for looking at your kid, whatever age they are now, and saying, "I'm proud of you," with nothing after it. No but, no condition, just that. The cycle that was handed to you, you can be the one who puts it down. That's not weakness. That's the bravest thing a man can do.